That's why power went out. That's why it had to be basically rationed throughout the state. That's why you see rolling blackouts happening. So use less, and the neighbors who don't have power will hopefully get their power back quicker as a result. That's the long and short of it. So some people were pointing to frozen wind turbines and saying, see, this is why you don't use this. So this is partly true.
It's partly true. I love that he is more honest than most of the conservatives by not being willing to just say, it's the wind turbines. But he also lacks integrity. So rather than completely discount it, he's got to push also the anti-green narrative filled with lies.
If all of wind just disappears in Texas on a normal day, that's not that big of a deal. The rest of the power sources in Texas can make up for it, and that's mostly natural gas. It's some coal and it's some nuclear, but mostly natural gas. The thing about it is, wind power gets first dibs. It's the first electron that gets bought and then sold to the customer. So this is because it's favored, in order to reduce carbon emissions, right? To favor more of a green energy solution. So what happens is there's a divestment over time in baseload energy, more reliable energy sources like gas and nuclear. That's bad in times like this, because we already know renewables just aren't going to work when we really need them, when it gets really, really hot and really, really cold.
Where's he getting that information from? He's just saying something without any basis. We already know that it doesn't work in the cold. Then why is it that it's being used in places that are much more colder than Texas, and they're not in blackouts? How is he going to just sit there and tell people, oh, we already know it doesn't work? Don't give you any sources or the basis of that statement. Spreading misinformation to his listeners, who he knows is going to be too lazy to look it up. So these are the states that have the most wind turbines. As you can see, there's many being used in the really, really cold climates. Here, here, here. And somehow they're not in blackouts. Wisconsin grid hums along in temperatures that cripple Texas. Meanwhile, this representative is spreading misinformation to his constituents. We design everything with the understanding that it can get down to 40 degrees below zero and even stay there for a few days. 40 degrees below zero. But this guy is talking about, we already know. There's no question about it. We already know it's going to fail in the cold. Wind turbines are equipped with winter weather packages such as heating elements to keep ice off the blades and insulated gearboxes, allowing them to work at temperatures as cold as 22 degrees below zero. Why is it that other places that get much colder aren't in darkness like Texas? Maybe Texas is the problem, not the wind turbines. Maybe conservatives and Republicans lying and spreading misinformation is the real problem, not the wind turbines. Maybe Americans being too lazy to look things up themselves, allowing themselves to be led along by a string by their partisan, liberal, and conservative media and these corrupt politicians, maybe that's the problem. Because if we weren't so lazy and we looked up things ourselves, then we wouldn't be so easily misled. Liberals, conservatives.
When there's any kind of externality, or on a normal day when the wind just isn't blowing and it's cloudy out. So you're always going to need that baseload energy. The question is, how do you get it? And
I think he means to say wind's not blowing or it's cloudy out, because I don't think clouds affect wind turbines. I think he's talking about turbines and solar panels.
Over time, investment has been skyrocketing towards renewables and basically divesting in these other sources of baseload energy.
Notice how he says this with such confidence. If I were some lazy person listening to him, I would have a lot of confidence in him right now. He looks like he knows what he's talking about. He's well spoken. Divesting and we already know it's not going to work.
So it's not so much that the reason we had blackouts was because wind turbines froze.
No, it's not at all that.
It's more of the long-term implications. It's the overall energy mix on the grid as more of the reason why we didn't have the baseload energy necessary to meet the extraordinary demand that we're just not used to. That's the long and short of it, everybody. I will say some of the gas plants were also down because they were just under scheduled maintenance.
Some of the gas plants were also down. Now, if I weren't paying attention, the way he worded that would almost sound like the problem is, after all, about the wind turbines. And additionally, or also, by the way, some of the other stuff failed too. Look at how much time he spent talking about wind. And now he just, as an afterthought, mentions the primary source of the outage. The wind turbines are only providing 23% of the power, and because of them not being set up properly for the cold, the output went to about 12% of the power. So most of the missing power was not coming from wind. There's no reason to focus on wind at all.
Because this is the time of year where you would schedule that maintenance because, not everybody's turning the air conditioning on. So you generally think this time of year in Texas that's when you don't need as much power generation online. So that was another reason that people don't quite realize. And really quickly, some critics would say, well, this is why Texas needs to be connected to the rest of the United States and its grid, because we do have our own grid here.
Listen to how he is about to debunk this with such confidence and so, I don't know what it is. Actually, let's hear it, Crenshaw.
That has been debunked as well by anybody who knows what they're talking about, because the reality is
it's been debunked as well by anyone that knows what they're talking about.
Extraordinary events like this. Our neighbors also have power outages. This is happening in Oklahoma, Louisiana as well. So it is not the case that if we were connected, we would be able to import their energy because they're having the same problems.
So Texas is not the only state that's currently in an emergency crisis right now. It's just the media, the biased media, is refusing to report about Louisiana with frozen pipes and people dying, right? There's people dying in these other states as well, but the media is not reporting on it. And also the logic is, because there's outages in other states who are not isolated, clearly being isolated is not relevant. Of course, a straw man argument, because no one ever said being connected to the main grid means you can't have an outage, right? No one said being connected to the grid means you can't have an outage. So pointing out that somebody else had an outage is not a point. It's like you buy a car that's known to be very, very unreliable, and someone tells you should get a Honda. Hondas are much more reliable. And they reference, actually, I have a neighbor who has a Honda and his alternator died on him. And I have another neighbor who has another Honda and he got a flat tire. No one said buying a Honda means you're not going to have any problems whatsoever. What they said is what you're driving is a piece of junk, and you're definitely going to have a ton of problems, and the Honda would be a better bet. But yes, any car has problems. Yes, being connected to the main grid doesn't mean that you're not going to have outages. And in fact, the fact that Texas is the only place that's in crisis right now is actually evidence that being connected to the grid apparently works, because Texas is the only one that's in the dire straits that they're in. But you don't want to acknowledge that, right? You want to go and, the windmills and all the grid. No. Other people have outages too. Holy smokes.
So just not exactly true. Let's get...
Yep, not exactly true. This is the Debate Me channel. Debate me in the comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Be well.